from winning the Border-Gavaskar Scholarship for training at the Australian Cricket Academy to making his international debut at the age of 19, Suresh Raina was once projected to follow in the footsteps of some of the greats like Sourav Ganguly or even MS Dhoni. However, with the rise of players like Kevin Pietersen, Steve Smith, Virat Kohli, and AB de Villiers, cricket has evolved significantly in the last few decades. The rise of the T20 format has also transformed the way batsmen approach the game, moving away from the VVS, Laxman, and Rahul Dravid's conservative batting style to something more aggressive. Now, given the popularity of aggressive batting styles in India, this should have been no issue for someone with the class of Raina. But why did the former stand-in captain of the Indian national side struggle to keep up with modern batting, and what ultimately led to his retirement? Born on November 27, 1986, Suresh Raina didn't grow up in a cricketing family. His father was a military officer, and his mother was a housewife. However, a young Raina always had ambitions to play cricket, and this would shine through quite early in his career. By the age of 16, he would become captain of the Uttar Pradesh under-16 side, but more impressively was the fact that he would also find himself in the Indian under-19 side that toured England. His 2 half-centuries were what ultimately put him on the map. For a couple of years around the early 2000s, Raina would become the next up-and-coming star who slowly made a name for himself and would find himself representing his country for the first time at senior level on 30th July 2005. This would be his first taste of international cricket, and the stage was set for his T20 debut about a year later. However, Raina had to wait 5 more years until 2010 before making his Test debut. By all accounts, Raina was a rising star, and what he brought to the table was an incredible set of skills and versatility. One of the most valuable assets that Raina initially brought to the table was his incredible versatility. Being quick between the wickets and having decent power in his shots meant that he would play a pivotal role in various aspects of the Indian cricket team. In fact, Raina was the first Indian player to score a century in all 3 formats of the game, proving that it didn't matter if he had to take his time or smash every ball into the stands. But one of the most important parts of his game would be his fielding. Raina would emulate the great Jonty Rhodes and Ricky Ponting when fielding in various areas of the field. Whilst excelled on the offside, he could also pull in a couple of near-impossible catches in the slips. While he was never a renowned bowler, he did offer India that extra bowling option, which would be great for transitioning. This was very similar to Kohli, who would occasionally also step in when the team needed a transitional bowler to set up a different attack. Raina would essentially play a pivotal role, helping India to the 2011 ODI World Cup and later adding the Champions Trophy to his collection in 2013. By this time, he had a big following and he would be labeled by many media outlets and fans as the next possible Indian captain, a position he would occasionally fill as a stand-in during his career. But a big weakness was lingering, and this was often attributed to Raina only standing 5 feet and 9 inches tall compared to many bowlers easily clearing the 6-foot mark. As with any great batsman, it's not uncommon to find that opposing teams invest a lot of time and money to study the weaknesses of players. In fact, this is something that Kohli and even the great Sachin Tendulkar also had to face on numerous occasions during his career. Whilst teams were struggling to deal with Raina, who often shored up the middle order, the Australians would finally discover one of his greatest weaknesses. This would become something that stuck, and it would be the reason Raina often struggled to regain his form. During the 2013 season in Indian Tour Down Under, Mitchell Johnson and co. realized that when bowling on a hard pitch with extra bounce, the ball would often be out of range of Raina. This naturally suggested that he struggled when facing balls on the back foot. With the exposure of this issue, many teams and bowlers took advantage of this unique vulnerability, and Raina would occasionally find himself backed up in the crease. In fact, some of his attempts at these bouncers would ultimately end up going straight up or often leading to catching down at fine leg. However, playing from the back foot was also daunting and he often negged it, finding himself being caught in the slips. But Raina relented, scoring decent runs occasionally, but the short ball issue became more prominent in 2015. Suresh Raina was never the kind of batsman you'd find in AB de Villiers, even though their style was pretty similar. However, his average was decent at around the mid-40s. This was enough to have him labeled as being consistent and keeping his place. However, heading to 2015, Raina was slowly becoming weaker and weaker to the short ball. Whilst he did have the occasional standout performance, especially in the short format, the World Cup would ultimately see him being dropped. Raina only managed to average 25 runs per innings for the 2015 season, and this was one of the main factors leading to India not becoming back-to-back champions. Post-World Cup, he often found himself left out of the ODI and T20 squads, and he wasn't truly the best when it came to the long format of the game. However, Raina was as driven as ever in trying to get back into the national side. Finally, he would get his opportunity on the domestic stage. Just a year after many noticed his decline, Raina once again got the opportunity to compete for the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy. He would go back to score 3 consecutive half-centuries and finish the tournament with a high score of 126. However, doing so from just 56 balls meant that Raina was looking as good as ever, and it would offer him a call up back to the Indian squad. Being thrust back into the spotlight would once again prove fatal for Raina, who would be peppered with a short ball every game, and he once again faltered at getting any decent runs. Ultimately, he would once again be dropped from the side due to this massive issue. However, the game was ever-evolving, and with more emphasis being placed on the short format, T20 style of the game, bowlers were no longer being defensive to limit runs, but actively snuffled out weaknesses to get more wickets. To compensate for this, Raina adapted his batting style, which meant that his natural movement shifted from moving in front of the wickets, as he had always done, to moving backward. Knowing his struggles with the short ball meant Raina was premeditating deliveries and expecting the short ball more frequently, but this left him wide open to fuller deliveries. By using the 3 common tactics, one moving to the leg side to open up the offside, back to free his arms, and going inside the line of the ball to open the leg side, Raina had some kind of plan to deal with this issue. However, none of this seemed natural, and eventually, bowlers could predict his movements. This led to a run of bad form once again, and Raina was slowly becoming a name people had forgotten about. But what ultimately led to his downfall? Suresh Raina is undoubtedly one of the most talented cricketers to ever play the game. However, his lack of adaptability would become one of the most damning factors to him scoring big runs. With Raina being forced back into the wicket with a short ball, he would ultimately expect it to come. However, modern bowlers are also evolving, and this is where the big issue came into play. The more Raina had been focusing on playing the short ball, the more unpredictable bowlers would become. As he was moving back into his crease, he became vulnerable to fuller deliveries, and Yorkers would catch him off guard more frequently. Raina would either be bowled or trapped LBW on many occasions due to this issue. One of the best examples of Raina focusing on the short ball came against South Africa. With his weight predominantly on the back foot, Raina was caught by a devastating Yorker by Dale Steyn. Now, Steyn was one of the greatest pace bowlers to play the game, but the IPL revealed that even medium pace bowlers would exploit this vulnerability. Ultimately, Raina would play his final game for India in 2018, and he would also go on to call it quits for the remainder of his international career. However, he did try to continue with first-class cricket, but just 2 years later, and perhaps under the influence of the pandemic, Raina called an end to his entire career. It would be unfortunate for many to see someone who could be the next superstar for India retire in such a manner, but his lack of adaptability would definitely be the main cause. But what do you think about Suresh Raina, and was there anything else the great man could have done to master the short ball? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to watch this next.